University of Sharjah. Allow me to start this presentation with, how can you move? It's not moving. Oh, there. I'm not sure. No, it's not changing. Oh, there. All right. You can check whether the audience is here. Hello, can you hear me? Hello. Test. Can you hear me? I'm not sure if
Online participants.
online,
Attendees.
Zoom. It's okay. Can they?
I think they can hear you.
Right. If you can't hear me, I cannot do much. I'm in Vietnam. Had I been in the US, it would have been a different story. Okay. Right. Okay. This is part of my thank yous, and I would like to ask you all. Do you know that gentleman showing in the photo?
Yes.
The biggest gratitude and thank yous from myself and my friend and colleague Huda goes to Roger. Honestly speaking, the best time, the glorious time I've spent in AUS was under his leadership and management, and I just would love to express and appreciate him. I mean, like express our appreciation to him right here, because he is the reason why the two of us found about this conference and actually joined it. So thank you, Roger, and our hearts are out there for you. Okay, let me take you through the outline of our presentation today. We're going to start with a brief introduction, and then we're going to move into the impact of COVID-19 on ESL teaching in general and ESL teaching in the sector of academic writing specifically. Then we're gonna move into the impact. Into the hypothesis, then the methodology, results, conclusion, and we're gonna be sharing our resources. Then we open the floor for questions and answers. Hey, Matt. All right. So. The month of March 2020, that beautiful month of spring, it's actually our birthday. We're born in March. Unfortunately, marks the time when the heart of our vibrant planet came to a complete stop. Due to the spread of COVID-19, as we all know. And true that this stop has lasted for about 6 months and it came back gradually to life. However, the impact of it, the tragic or like the severe impact, the damage and effects across all levels, sectors and aspects of life, including the educational sector of L2, is obvious, and especially in the move to online teaching. The focus of this presentation actually is going to be on the effect of the impact of COVID-19 on the L2 teaching and learning. Specifically in our presentation or the study, the focus will be on the impact of COVID-19 on the L2 academic writing, teaching, and learning in higher education sector during the pandemic. We all know that teaching a second language is hard on its own, let alone when it moved completely to online. Back in the days, without mentioning names, we had an HOD who highly promoted for the flipped learning, the presentation before us. And people who were actually doing that were considered like tech freaks, and those who were depending on it completely were considered lazy, not knowing that actually down the line, we're gonna be moving completely online. There we go, like. So the online teaching actually is not new, as we all know. It's there in the flipped learning techniques, and however, it was used as like a supplement or a complementary to the traditional classroom setup in an L2. And the fact that the COVID-19 took us completely into online learning, again, introduced some challenges. So what teachers took for granted in the traditional instruction face-to-face setup, such as teaching methods, lesson activities, time spent on tasks, student responses, feedback, student paralinguistic cues, assignments, and assessment, all became more demanding for both teachers and students when the pandemic hit and we moved completely online. So this leads us actually to discuss the challenges. So the challenges, according to the literature, I mean, I'm not going to be saying names or anything because everything is going to be mentioned in the last slide on our resources. It was split into two categories, the teaching and the emotional. And I would love actually to open the floor at the end of this session for everyone in here to share. It's going to be helpful actually to learn from each other. So we're going to postpone this till the end, but let me take you through what we found in the literature. So on the teaching level, it was actually divided into three categories as well. The one related to methods, the other one was related to student-teachers interaction, and the last one was related to class management. So the methods used on the face-to-face actually, well, you know, the normal setup, it didn't work on the, or in the online setup, and in the literature, they named it beautifully actually, it's called face-to-screen. I liked it. Very musical, but it's very painful at the same time. Very expressive, yes, it's true. So a good number of the teachers are so used to delivering a class or a session in the regular classroom setup, as we said. However, during the pandemic, many of the teachers had little knowledge about how to design a lesson plan that would fit in an online session. The teaching programs that we all graduated from never included, at least the one I went to, have never actually brought up the online factor. And the dilemma whether to keep a certain activity as is, used in a classical classroom and to use it again in the online session didn't work. Student-teacher interaction in the face-to-face versus the face-to-screen setup. And in the face-to-face setup, the one-to-one interaction between the teachers and students and their peers as well were limited due to the virtual setup. So, I'm sorry, I got two of them mixed up. And this is under the student-teacher interaction. Now the last one, the classroom management, the majority of the literature actually shed the light on the teachers no longer having control over their classroom. Due to the fact that we moved completely to online and it was depending on technology, so whoever provided us with the technology is now in control of our classrooms. The other point that was raised in the literature is the fact that they couldn't control the attendance in their class. Normally, when you're in a normal setup, you can, by where the students sit, know who is in your classroom and who is outside your classroom. Attendance. The third point was test security. Basically, before, as teachers, we had control over designing our tests and giving it out to our students in any form or mean that we wanted. Now with the online factor and the dominance of the technology, it's coming from up above and we have to abide by them as they are. The last point is the technological challenges manifested in the internet interruption and the lack of the technological knowledge of how to troubleshoot the problems with the computer, programs, apps, and so on and so forth. On the emotional level, this is the part actually that caught my attention the most, and I completely relate to all comments that they were actually mentioned in the literature. I myself have the degree, I do have the degree and I did teach, but it actually affected all levels, including the admin level. The fact that we experienced losing loved ones through the pandemic, the fact that we are away from home and those loved ones are away from us, they put a lot of emotional pressure on people. The long and tough quarantine regulations that were dictated on people who tested positive, and the fact that some of them are alone and they have to deal with it individually. The cut in salaries, because of the lack of need for teachers. And the last one, which we all experienced working in universities or schools, it's the number of student enrollment. It dropped like bananas. It's just, one semester after the other, we were just facing and waiting and anticipating for the bad news of thank you for your services, you're no longer needed. Yeah? So let me take you, actually this all briefs up to the our hypothesis. Considering that L2 teachers, including L2 academic writing teachers, were comfortable with their regular teaching routine in a regular classroom setup, the sudden move to online teaching during COVID-19 opened their eyes to the importance of reflection and questioning of the workability of their regular adapted teaching methods and techniques inside a regular classroom. Thus, reflecting, this is our hypothesis. We believe that reflecting caused revamp and change to the teacher's regular teaching routine and used methods and materials from the regular face-to-face into the online method. And now I would like to hand the floor to my friend and colleague Huda to take you through the results and the analysis.
Thank you, Hadil. That was amazing. Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. So, based on the lovely discussion and the literature that Hadil just introduced, we wanted to basically understand or explore whether this new online setup forced us as teachers to go through our regular face-to-face classroom practices, and whether we were really reflective on, or did we just go on, okay, this is a phase that we're all suffering, going through, and then once that phase is over, we will go back to our normal teaching practices. So we decided to understand if our hypothesis is correct. And basically, looking back at my own teaching practices and what I did, we decided to send out a survey to academic writing teachers who taught L2 classes at an American university in the Middle East. And we got 20 participants who teach introductory composition courses. There was a total of 17 questions. We asked them 17 questions, and the questions were comprised of multiple choice questions and short answer questions to gain insight and explanation of teachers' experiences. Most of the questions were repetitive intentionally. So I intentionally, when we crafted these survey questions, they were just the same question being repeated in different words, in different formats, multiple choice, short answer questions, to gain more insights, to see how honest and reflective they were in their responses. It's important to note that all the teachers who participated in the study have been teaching academic writing for more than 10 years. Now, the results were quite interesting. I'll start with the 60% of all the participants agreed that the sudden shift to online teaching moved them out of their comfort zone. 60%, again, not necessarily the same 60%, but the same number, 60% of the participants were encouraged to continue with the same online teaching practices following their end-of-term student evaluations for the first term teaching online. Again, another 60% of the participants thought that their first online teaching experience triggered self-reflections on their teaching approaches. Now we have a change in the number. 80% admitted that the sudden move to the online teaching was a reason or a motive to revisit their teaching strategies. And most teachers relied on PowerPoint presentations, lectures, group work pre-COVID, but they started using new teaching methods that they never used before when they shifted online, including Google Docs, Google Suite, break rooms and break groups, and online forum discussions. Now, of course, what do these numbers mean? And how important are they? And what did they, or how did they answer our hypotheses? Did they confirm it? Did they go against our hypotheses? Are we just assuming? So here's what we discovered from a closer reading of these numbers. Now, I'd like to highlight that the fact that we did this study 2 years after the pandemic, and after going back from pre-COVID to COVID online, and then to the classroom setup, which is the normal thing, but not the normal thing, having experienced online learning and online teaching, allowed us as researchers and allowed the participants, more importantly, to reflect on their experience pre-COVID, COVID, online teaching, and post-COVID. And this allowed for more depth and reflection on the effects of COVID-19 on teachers' personal formative assessment practices. Most of the research focuses on, most of the research, when we conducted it, had focused on, the literature focused a lot on the formal assessment. Rarely did it focus on, the informal assessment that takes place. We as teachers, when no one is looking at us, when no one is evaluating us, do we look at and reconsider, what happened in the classroom today? Or is it just fine? And this was something we were really interested in knowing, to understand whether COVID-19, this sudden shift, sudden change, forced us to think about our teaching approaches. Now, from the findings and the analysis of the findings mentioned about the 60%, I was looking at them and I was dumbfounded. Oh, there's nothing really I can say from the 60%. But it just showed that some teachers articulated the need to reinvent some of their lessons. Pre-COVID teaching in their comfort zone led to stagnation and repetition, thinking that their teaching, while it is, the same, while it is repetitive, it worked fine. There's no need to change. There's no need whatsoever to adapt. There's no need to do anything in a better way. Why bother? Anyway, it's working. But teachers, however, moving online showed that there is always a need for innovation and change. And teachers should always explore new teaching practices to meet the ever-changing needs of their students. We are living in a very fast-paced, ever-changing world. Our students, I can't guarantee that they will be interested in my discussion if I'm just going to stand up there and present in a very monotonous, very boring, I'll flip through my presentation and here we are today. If I do this, if I were not, if I even had to or were to remain that monotonous during my online classes, my students wouldn't have been there. They may have been there just online, but they would have fell asleep. They would have not cared. They wouldn't have participated in anything. And interestingly, because I varied, just like many other professors who participated in the survey, admitted they had to find new ways. They had to go, quote unquote, as we say informally, get out of their way, get out of their comfort zone, to find better ways to teach, to find better ways to engage their students. And this emphasizes the need to explore new teaching practices to meet the ever-changing needs of their students. Out of all the participants, only one teacher said that they had always been reflecting on their teaching after each and every class, even in face-to-face and online. So to that specific teacher, the sudden shift to online learning did not really affect their reflection processes. However, many teachers, the others, adopted and carried with them, even post-COVID, more interactive teaching practices that had never been used before. So we got to learn, even when we did this research, about new and other tools that not even ourselves we never used. Nearpod, Kahoot, Mentimeter, Padlet, Flipgrid, Duolingo, Babbel, and Notepad. And these sound like very resourceful tools that we can explore, and they have been using them since the outbreak of the pandemic. Google Drive was the most common, however, new tool used by most academic writing teachers who participated in the study. Interestingly, I too, myself, I have never bothered before, pre-COVID, to use Google Suite or Google Docs, even though we had access to it. But, I was happy with the very traditional, come to my office, I'll add my comments, I'll write them down for you, or I'll download it as a Word document, add my comments, and send it to you. And I found this new opportunity to interact with my students. And it presented us with a dialogic process, because it allowed students to reply to our comments, ask, inquire if they don't understand anything, and even, defy our own comments. They could reject our suggestions, they could go against the comment, they could delete it without accepting it, they could do whatever they wanted, which is very important in writing. Now, to make some meaning of the 60% versus 80%, what's quite interesting is the discrepancy between the teachers' responses to the act of self-reflection. Yes, only 60% refer to the necessity of reflecting on their teaching experiences, whereas 80% admitted that they had to revisit their pre-COVID teaching classroom practices. When we asked them if their move to online learning stimulated teachers' self-assessment and subsequent reflection, 40% fully agreed without giving any information. No one disagreed, but their agreement and terms differed. So the other 60% had very different reasons. And this means, what it means is that their definition as teachers and approach to self-assessment and self-reflection is different. So different teachers look at it very differently. They don't perceive it in the same way. And you may think that the above results and analysis goes against the hypothesis we made originally in our research, in this particular research, but on the contrary, we believe that this difference relates to the personalized process, the raw process of self-assessment and self-reflection. This emphasizes the true nature of formative assessment. So, Hadil, I'm done with the analysis. I'm sorry.
I'm back. And I'd like to just say something about how the analysis is put in the middle of the screen. It's amazing how the L is lined up perfectly with the, I like it. Well, to conclude, so basically teaching online, it's a very different, it follows a very different setup than teaching face-to-face, no language teacher education or development program could have truly prepared the faculty or the students for that sudden and emotionally stressful shift. In addition, if we consider that teacher education and development is an ongoing learning process, we have to, or the educational programs have to start considering adding the online technique into their programs, and finally engaging in reflective practice with the aid, engaging in the reflective practice will help the teachers actually explore new ways of doing their work. In addition, because online teaching will unfortunately and is staying with us longer. Language teacher educators will need to reconsider how to prepare the learners and the students to develop their digital competence in order to better serve the needs of their students and the needs of their profession in the future. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for your good listening, and the floor is open to questions.
If you have any question, feel free to raise your hand so that one of our collaborators can bring the microphone to you.
So